The future belongs to the common man with uncommon determination. A very blissful morning to the assembly of distinguished guests and valued audience. Overwhelming elation sweeps us today when we have gathered to acknowledge the contribution of Dr. PRJ Gangadharan in the field of tuberculosis. I am Dr. Gunjan Priyam, your host for today, and I heartily welcome you all to Dr. PRJ Gangadharan 21st Endowment Award presentation and oration for the year 2020. We are really honored to have our respected Shri Dhirubai ji, President Kasturba Health Society, Dr. Madhukar Pai, guest of honor and our awardee for today's function, Honorable Vice President Shri Tapadia ji, Dr. B.S. Garg, Secretary KHS, Madam Narang, Emeritus Director Professor, Department of Microbiology and Convener of the award, Dr. A.K. Shukla Sir, Dean MGIMS, Dr. Poonam Shivkumar Verma, MS, Kasturba Hospital, and Dr. Vijay Shri Kherkar, HOD Microbiology and Organizing Secretary of today's ceremony. Today, the award for the year 2020 is being awarded to Dr. Madhukar Pai, Canada Research Chair in Epidemiology and Global Health at McGill University and Associate Director, McGill International TB Center. We are very happy to have him with us. No auspicious occasion can begin without invoking the blessings of God Almighty. I now invite Mr. Kavination at the harmonium along with our undergraduate students of MGIMS for the invocation song.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने कही जी पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कही जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे पर दुखी उपकार करे तो ये पर दुखी उपकार करे तो ये मन अभिमान न आने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए सकल लोक मां सहुने वंदे निंदा न करे वाच काज मन निश्चल राखे धन धन जननी तेनी रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी परस्त्री जेने मात रे जीवा थकी असत्य न बोले पर धन न बछाले हाथ रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए मोह माया व्यापी नहीं जेने दृढ़ वैराग्य जेना मन मारे राम नाम सुन ताली लागी सकल तीरथ तेना तन मारे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए वन लोभीने कपट रहित छे काम क्रोध निर्वाया रे भणे नरसैयो तेनु दर्शन करता कुलय को तेरा नार्या रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए
Thank you, Mr. Kavination-ji, Shalini and Akriti. In line with our tradition, we would now like to pay our tribute and seek the blessings of those who have been our inspiration, Bapu, and our Dr. Sushila Nair, the founder of our institute. May I now request Dr. Madhukar Paisar and Shri Dhirubai ji to garland the portraits of Bapu and Badi Behan ji. I also request all the dignitaries on the dais to please join them in this pious ritual. Thank you, sir. Sood Gundis are a symbol of simplicity and Gandhian values, symbolizing our compassion for the common man. May I now request Dr. Deepashri ma'am and Dr. Ruchita ma'am to please welcome Dr. Madhukar Pai sir, Shri Dhirubai ji. Again, I request to kindly welcome Shri Tapadia ji and Dr. B.S. Garg sir. I would request again to welcome Dr. A.K. Shukla sir and Dr. Poonam Verma ma'am. I also request to please also welcome Dr. Narang ma'am and Dr. Vijayashree ma'am. I would now request Dr. A.K. Shukla Sir, Dean MGIMS, to kindly welcome our guests.
Respected Shri Dhirubhai ji, President Kasturba Health Society, Shri Tapadia ji, Vice President Kasturba Health Society, Dr. Garg, Dr. Madam Narang, Dr. Narang Sir, Poonam, Vijay Shri. On behalf of Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, it is indeed an honor for me to welcome the recipient of 21st PRJ Gangadharan Award, Shri Madhukar Pai ji, amongst us. We are indeed honored to have you amongst us, sir, and on behalf of the faculty and students in this institute and the management, we welcome you to MGIMS. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now begin with the award ceremony. May I now request Dr. Pratibha Narang ma'am, convener of the award, to give brief introduction of the awardee and the award. Madam, please.
Our honored guest and recipient of the Endowment Oration Award, Dr. Madhukar Pai, Shri Dhirubhai ji Mehta, President Kasturba Health Society, Shri Tapadia ji, Trustee and Vice President Kasturba Health Society, Dr. Garg, Secretary Kasturba Health Society, Dr. Shukla, Dean MGIMS, Dr. Poonam Shivkumar, MS Kasturba Hospital, Dr. Vijayshri Kherkar, HOD Microbiology and Organizing Secretary for the function. Honored guests in the audience, staff of Kasturba Health Society, faculty and students of MGIMS, Kasturba Nursing College and School, and dear friends. To begin with, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Pai. We have been waiting for this moment since 2020. The first 2 years went in with COVID pandemic, and last year, because of your earlier commitments, you were not able to schedule the visit. This year, when you said that you were coming to India for the WHO meeting, even though it was the second award function, I grabbed the opportunity to have you with us here ultimately. Friends, I have heard Dr. Pai's guest lectures on a number of occasions, and let me share with you that it is a treat to listen to him. He is one of the most sought-after orators in the academic field. He conveys his thoughts and shares his experiences with crystal clear clarity. So I know we are in for a nice oration, and therefore on our part, Dr. Pai, we are obliged to you for accepting the award. Also, Dr. Pai, give me the freedom to inform the audience that our association with you is more than 2 decades old, when in the initial years of this millennium, you were introduced to us by Dr. Kalantri, and we all worked together on evaluating, for the first time in India, the interferon gamma assays against the time-tested tuberculin skin test. Of course, we had been conducting research on tuberculosis in 1984 and are still continuing, but these studies, thanks to you, were published in high-impact journals and attracted many citations. These were also part of your PhD work, and we are very happy that in these 20 years, you have scaled great heights and become a renowned international authority, not only in epidemiology and tuberculosis, but also in an extremely difficult subject to understand, at least where I am concerned, is systematic reviews and meta-analysis. You also have your own website, which is very interactive and educative. I would advise the younger generation, and especially the postgraduates, to certainly dip into it. I would also like to inform those who may not know Dr. Pai that he is also enrolled as a visiting professor to MGIMS. Just to sum up my introduction to Dr. Pai, I would just like to recite 4 lines. जो मुस्कुरा रहा है उसे दर्द ने पाला होगा, जो चल रहा है उसके पाँव में छाला तो होगा, बिना संघर्ष के इंसान चमक नहीं सकता यारों, जो जलेगा उसी दीप से ही तो उजाला होगा. Now, for the benefit of all those who are here for the first time, just a few words about the award. And I'm very happy to say that today Dr. Kameshwari had requested me that if we could have a recording or we could make this on the YouTube. So we have tried to organize it, and we have sent a link of this function to everybody. It is there with them also. She has, Dr. Kameshwari Kaunduri is Dr. Gangadharam's daughter, and they specially requested that even though it is midnight, I shall be awake and I shall be looking into it. So this is, I'm grateful to them also. So Dr. Patisapu Ramajogi Gangadharam was a great Indian scientist who dedicated and committed his life to the cause of tuberculosis, its diagnosis, treatment, and control. So much so that after he passed away on 15th August 1999, the North American chapter of International Union Against Tuberculosis and Lung Diseases in 2000 dedicated their entire conference in his name, a rare honor for any Indian. He was also a recipient of Robert Koch Centennial Award, along with many, many other awards, which I am not able to. They are there in the invitation card, and also we have put up a poster outside about his achievements. And what is more important for us is, for our institution from our institution point of view, is that he was also a true Gandhian at heart and an ardent admirer of Dr. Sushila Nair. He visited us for the first time in 1992 for our international CME on tuberculosis, and that was the beginning of a very fruitful collaboration between him and our institute. Unfortunately, he passed away on 15th August 1999, and in 2000, his wife, Mrs. Shakuntala Gangadharam, instituted the award in his name with the noble objective of recognizing the contributions of great Indian scientists working in the field of tuberculosis. The component of the oration has been added so that the luminaries can share and inspire other young scientists with their experiences. The award consists of a citation, a certificate of honor, and a cash award of 25,000. I'm happy to announce here that Dr. Pai has donated the award amount to our hospital for the benefit of the poor patients. Thank you very much, Dr. Pai. In the end, I just want to say that while we all know that TB is curable, the need of the hour is to remain focused on 4 critical pillars of the National Strategic Plan to eliminate TB. That is, detect, treat, prevent, and build. Build by bridging the gaps by implementing strategies and innovations for the benefit of patients and the community as a whole. I implore you to get involved, participate, and strengthen the national program. In Jharkhand, they have evolved a community participation strategy where the common people in the community are adopting TB families and ensuring that of their health and their welfare. These people are called Nikshay Mitra. I am sure we can all afford to become one. Think about it. In the end, I once again thank you all for joining us today and extend to you, one and all, a very warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I would request Dr. Poonam Verma, ma'am, Medical Superintendent, Kasturba Hospital, to kindly read the citation being presented along with the award to Dr. Madhukar Pai, recipient of the award for the year 2020. Dr. Poonam, ma'am.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, Dr. Madhukar Pai, all the senior teachers who are here, my colleagues and dear friends. It's an honor to read the citation for Dr. Madhukar Pai. Dr. PRJ Gangadharan Endowment Oration Award, introduced in the year 2000 by Mrs. Shakuntala Gangadharan in the fond memory of her late husband, is awarded each year to an Indian scientist who has contributed significantly towards the cause of tuberculosis control. The Kasturba Health Society and the members of Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences Sevagram feel honored and privileged in conferring this award to Dr. Professor Madhukar Pai, Canada Research Chair in Epidemiology and Global Health at McGill University, Montreal, and Associate Director of McGill International TB Center. Sir, we really congratulate you for that. Dr. Madhukar Pai completed his MBBS from Stanley Medical College, Chennai in 1993, MD in Community Medicine from CMC Vellore in 1997, and passed Diplomat of the National Board of Examination in 1998. In 2004, he completed his PhD in epidemiology from Berkeley University, California, where his topic of dissertation was evaluation of newer diagnostic tests for tuberculosis. His postdoctoral fellowship at the University of California, San Francisco was completed in 2005, also with the focus on tuberculosis epidemiology. Dr. Pai has had an extremely illustrious career. He is a brilliant academician, prolific writer, gifted teacher, and a research worker of highest caliber. In medicine, there are two ways of serving the patients. One is through practicing clinical medicine, and the other is by facilitating the same through research and advocacy. Dr. Pai belongs to the second group. His contributions in the field are so magnanimous that he has become one of the luminaries in TB diagnostic and research. His research is mainly concentrated on improving the diagnosis and treatment of tuberculosis, especially in high-burden countries like India and South Africa. He has focused on evaluation of novel diagnostic tools and biomarkers for TB, spread and control of nosocomial TB infection in developing countries, and his center point has been evidence-based TB diagnosis with development, measurement, and improvement of standards for TB care and control. His research is supported by grant fundings from Gates Foundation, Grand Challenges Canada, and Canadian Institute of Health Research. His vast knowledge of infectious diseases has profound involvement in tuberculosis. He has won him international acclaims. He serves on the WHO Strategic and Technical Advisory Group for TB in the Southeast Asia region, and on the WHO Advisory Group on Tuberculosis Diagnostic and Laboratory. He is a member of Scientific Advisory Committee of FIND Geneva. He serves as a chair of the Public-Private Mixed PPM Working Group of the Stop TB Partnership. In India, he is a member of various institutional committees, including ICMR. Dr. Madhukar Pai has more than 400 publications. He serves and has served on the editorial boards of various journals, including Lancet Infectious Diseases, PLOS Medicine, BMJ Global Health, IUT-LD, IJMR, and IJTB. He is editor-in-chief of PLOS Global Public Health. As an academician, Dr. Pai regularly conducts many coveted training courses. His forte is tuberculosis epidemiology of infectious diseases, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis. He believes in disseminating knowledge and has delivered over 192 invited guest lectures, mostly on TB in India and many other countries. Dr. Pai has innumerable awards to his credit. Some of the prestigious ones are the Union Scientific Prize, Chanchlani Global Health Research Award, Haley Debas Prize, and David Johnson Faculty and Staff Award. He is an elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and a Fellow of the Canadian Academy of Health Sciences. Dr. Pai's global achievement symbolizes that success is all about coming together, sharing together, working together, and succeeding together. His commitment towards tuberculosis, dissemination of knowledge, making life easier for TB patients, and critical appraisals has made him an inspirational role model for all who are committed to eliminate TB not only from India but from the world. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I would now request Shri Dhirubhai ji, President KHS, to confer Endowment Oration Award for the year 2020 to Dr. Madhukar Pai, sir. I request Dr. Ruchita to kindly coordinate. सर्टिफिकेट इसके बाद Thank you, sir. I would now request Shri Dhirubhai ji to deliver his presidential address.
Yeah, better. Dr. Madhukar Pai, my colleagues and friends. To begin with, I join Mrs. Naran, Shri Tapadia ji, Garg, Shukla in welcoming you all to this important function. We once again have the pleasure of honoring an eminent personality who has devoted his life for the cause of eliminating TB. My heartiest congratulations to you, Dr. Pai, for this well-deserved award, and I am happy that finally you have been able to make it to Sevagram as well. As you are all aware, I am not a medical person. I first came to know about TB disease when the Prince of Bhavnagar had come to my place to lay the foundation stone of a TB hospital. This was in 1948. Most of us did not know anything about TB, but have all gone there to welcome the Prince of Bhavnagar, who had just merged his state with the Union of India. I know that TB has been recognized as a killer disease from the days of Mahabharata. In those days, TB was not curable, and the death of King Vichitravirya in his youth resulted and led to the war of Mahabharata. That is the Mahabharata. But the point is that today TB is curable. To state from my personal experience, my own brother developed TB in his 20s. Under the TB control program and treatment, he lived a happy life till he reached the age of 90. He had his family and he had his 3 children as well. The United Nations had set the target for elimination of TB as 2030, while India has made it 2025, 5 years ahead of the global target. Actually, as per the WHO Global TB Report of 2020, India ranks 39 in globally terms of TB incident rate at number of new TB patients are come forth. However, owing to India's overall population, these rates translated to a very large number of giving us the dismal reputation of harboring 1/4 of the global burden of the TB patient yet today. Approximately 1,200 people die of the disease every day. Looking at these figures, the task of elimination certainly looks over ambitious, but as I said in my last address also, I am a man of great optimism. I always believe that the end of the journey always begins with the first step. The commitment of our Prime Minister has at least set the ball rolling. This is the first time that any government in our country has taken the disease seriously. And I am told that the Prime Minister himself personally monitors the progress. With this strong political commitment, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has also taken definite steps in terms of conducive plans, policies, commensurate resources are also earmarked to match unprecedented challenges, especially in terms of access to free and rapid molecular diagnosis treatment and nutritional support to the patient. With digital technology, TB notifications have also increased. Efforts are being made to integrate TB services with all levels of health system in order to detect early and prevent emergence of new cases. What we now need is sustainability and accountability, and not only in India, but across the global health and development sector. From the topic of your talk, Dr. Madhukar, we will see it appears that you are also going to reflect upon the gaps. The government and its machinery is doing its part, and there is a need for the community to also participate and strengthen the good work undertaken. The medical colleges and research institutes must continue to work for TB and generate data that would provide useful information for inclusion in the national programs. You are quite aware, Dr. Pai, TB has been the major thrust area for research in our institute. Your own work on the latent TB was in collaboration with our institute. The first national level field trial on short courses chemotherapy with ramification was also conducted at our institute. Dr. Mrs. Naran has been involved in conducting the various surveys, including national level prevalence surveys, recurrence and relapse survey with NIRT and annual risk of TB infection RT. Survey with NITI. Recently, we completed active case finding with risk patients with ICMR. We were also planned to find invalidating the LAMP kit, which was also endorsed by WHO. These days are participating in important ICMR project on developing artificial intelligence tool for reading the roadways in the peripheral centers where radiologists are not available. Evolving a good vaccine for TB prevention would definitely facilitate control and elimination. Our Department of Community Medicine is deeply involved in evaluating the efficacy of the new PCG TB vaccine. Nobody knows better than you, Dr. Pai, the importance of screening healthcare workers for TB and latent TB. Our latest project in the infection and prevention of Central TB Division, CDC, and share is in prevention active TB among the health workers. We also cannot hope to eliminate TB unless we are able to do the same on animals. Under one health program, we took with Pennsylvania University in USA a project on bovine TB, which we have now planned to expand further in our collaboration with the Indian Veterinary Research Institute at Ijat Nagar, Bareilly. Much innovative work has been done, and non-TB microvasting also will happen. In the end, I once again want to reiterate that let us not go by dates. Let us continue our efforts ceaselessly and be accountable to our contributors, how to ever small towards the goal is putting disease in the pages of the history. In fact, this award is also a part of our commitment towards the same cause. Thanking you all.
Thank you, sir, for your address and words of wisdom. We will now have the oration by Dr. Madhukar Pai. The topic of today's oration is Bridging the No-Do Gap in Tuberculosis. May I request all the dignitaries on the dais to occupy the front rows for the oration.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so touched and humbled and honored to not only receive this award, but to come back here after so many years. I'm very, very sorry for not coming here for more than a decade, and coming here has reminded me about how precious this place is. I have lots of Sevagram stories that I could tell you, but I first want to thank Sri Dhirubhai ji, Dr. Narang, Dean Shukla, Dr. Garg, Dr. Poonam, Dr. Vijayashree, and my mentors and friends, Dr. Kalantri, Dr. Jaju. It is absolute pleasure to be back here. And I really, really am sorry I could not come during the pandemic. It was very challenging to travel at that time. And when I did come, I really wanted to go see my mother because I was very scared for her life during the Delta crisis. She's in her 80s. So I felt it was really critical for me to spend time with her. But this time, it worked out beautifully. So thank you for waiting for me patiently, and I'm really honored to be here. I first heard of Sevagram when I was a third-year MBBS student in the late 80s. I think it was 89, maybe 90. I was a good medical student, I think. I was interested in surgery or whatever. And then somebody told me there is a group called Medico Friend Circle who are doing some interesting thinking around medicine, what it means to be a doctor, are we really serving the needs of people in India, and so on and so forth. And they said the next MFC meeting is going to be in a place called Sevagram. I said, where is it? They said, it's close to Nagpur, you have to take a train and go, right? There were no flights that was easy to come at that time. So I remember taking a train all the way from Chennai and coming to Sevagram and staying in the Yatri Nivas here opposite the ashram, and meeting amazing people like Dr. Kalantri and Dr. Jaju, and it had a profound impact on my life. I decided not to train in surgery, and I chose to go into community medicine. I was the first one in my entire MBBS batch to get accepted into community medicine. That was my only choice. It was the only exam that I ever wrote in my entire life. That was only one entrance exam for community medicine at CMC Vellore, and I have never looked back in my entire life. There is not a day that I miss clinical practice, because to me, public health is my passion, community medicine is my passion, and the whole world opened for me in those days. In fact, I was in Delhi earlier this week, and some 6 or 7 community medicine PGs came and met me, and I took them out for dinner. And they were all in this state of agony, right? In India, taking community medicine is like, it's like the bottom of your choice, right? It's like nobody gets anything else, and then there's community medicine, right? And so they were all wanting to know what made me pick community medicine as my first choice. And I think it is because I was inspired by unbelievably interesting people. I felt that my real life's contribution will come in preventing diseases rather than taking care of sick people once they develop the disease. And I continue to work on TB in part because it appeals to me and it saddens me that too many people are dying of a disease that is eminently preventable and treatable. There is no reason why there should be so much death and devastation in these very ancient infectious diseases. And in fact, you can already see in my title, I'm agonized that in 2023, it is still the #1 leading infectious killer of humankind. For a while, COVID took over that role. TB is now back as a #1 infectious killer. And worse still, after decades, TB incidence and mortality globally have increased. We had never seen this before. So I had some hope in my lifetime that when I retire, TB will be gone. But I'm really saddened that I don't think that will happen, because the epidemic has gotten much, much worse during the pandemic. It is still continuing to ravage India. It is one of the biggest killers of people in India. And I was just asking about how bad the TB scenario is. Why on earth in 2023 are people dying of a curable disease is something we should all be thinking about. In fact, that is the whole essence of my talk. So before I talk about no-do gap in tuberculosis, I want to first say that no-do gap is a problem in all areas of global health. Many of you are too young to remember, but I'm sure people like Dr. Narang and Dr. Jaju and Dr. Kalantri will remember when I was in medical school, Health for All by 2000 was our shining goal that we were all aspiring to do. 2000 came and went, we didn't meet that goal. And then we said, okay, 2015, Millennium Development Goals. Well, 2015 came and went, we still didn't meet. Now we are in the era of Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I promise you, we will not meet the 2030 goals. In fact, the most recent scorecard says barely 10% of the 2030 SDG goals are on target, which means we will not end TB by 2030. We will not do so many things. Immunization coverage is dropping. Childhood immunization coverage is dropping. And I just saw startling data from the World Bank recently that many countries and governments are cutting back on health expenditure post-COVID. You would think that they would have learned their lesson, that without health, there is no wealth in any country. There is nothing more important than health, and yet Government after government after government is cutting back on health expenditure. India continues to underinvest in health at a magnitude that is absolutely terrifying. Government after government has failed to invest in healthcare in India. We're barely spending 1.5% of the GDP on health. How on earth will we deal with any pandemic if we are not even willing to invest in healthcare? So this is a story of global health. We say things, big things, health for all, and then we don't spend the money, we do not do the right things to meet that goal. To me, this is no-do gap. We know we should be doing something, but we refuse to do it, and we do not put the money behind that goal, and we let the opportunity pass by. TB is a spectacular case study of a no-do gap. We know how to treat the disease. We have fantastic tools, and yet 4 million people around the world that have TB are considered missing. The gap between the incidence, estimated incidence, and the numbers that we actually detect is 4 million. That is 40% of the world's TB is missing. How do you end a disease when 40% of your population with the disease is missing? How? Who can eliminate that disease? If you can't even find TB, how will you actually do anything about this disease? And guess which country has the highest burden of missing people? India, right? We are the biggest stumbling block for global TB elimination. If we don't get our act together, nothing is happening globally. This is the ground zero for the global tuberculosis epidemic. And all of you have an opportunity to do something about this problem. Extraordinarily high case fatality. We and others have estimated that about 5 to 10% of TB patients in this country are dying. Explain to me why. What causes this disease to have such severe case fatality when we have the antibiotics? We know how to treat and cure this. It's one thing when we lost people due to COVID. At that time, we genuinely didn't have much to offer. And I know how bad things were in the Delta crisis in India. But to lose people to an ancient bacterial infection that is curable is absolutely shameful. There is no words to explain this. This is colossal failure of the health system. There is zero reason that this many people should be dying of a curable disease. Every single TB death is a system failure because there is no reason at all why we should be losing this many people. Every single TB death, we should be asking, what on earth went wrong? Why on earth could we not do better? My grandfather apparently died of tuberculosis in Mangalore 80 years ago. Well, 80 years ago, I understand. There was absolutely no antibiotics then, right? Today, we have fantastic treatments. We have great diagnostics, and yet, this is the level of devastation this disease has. I've written a whole book on quality of TB care, and the whole book is free access that you can download and read. It's all about where we are losing people and why we are failing people with tuberculosis. Many guidelines are not implemented. Most TB targets are not met. There are long diagnostic delays. There are very leaky cascades. I'll show you what that means in a second. Competent care is lacking, and many people, even though they're quote-unquote cured of tuberculosis, they have extensive residual lung damage. They have what we call post-tuberculosis lung disease, sequelae such as bronchiectasis, COPD, dyspnea. They can't even walk for long because of the level of lung damage that they have endured. So let me just show you quick data. Study after study shows that there are great guidelines from WHO. Very few countries are actually implementing that guideline, right? That is one no-do gap. We did a Lancet Commission on tuberculosis about 5 years ago, and we are publishing an update paper next month in Lancet, and we did a scorecard. How many of the recommendations we made in the Lancet commissions have been actually carried out? You can see all the red. Virtually nothing we said has been implemented in most countries. Sensible, common sense recommendations still not being done by many countries. Cascades of care. It's a beautiful model of how you understand quality of care. After incident cases, how many get diagnosed? How many get put on treatment? How many complete the treatment? How many survive, right? Look at the gaps. From the time people start the journey to how many get to the finish line. For drug-sensitive TB, okay, not drug-resistant. For drug-sensitive TB, 1 in 2 people get through the cascade of care. 1 and 2. For drug-resistant TB, unbelievable. 1 in 5 people will survive the entire cascade of care. If you develop DRTB in this country, you are really, really at high risk for very bad outcomes. Why is this? Why can we not get people 6 months past the treatment duration? Why can we not get them through the treatment at all, right? These are the questions that we should all be asking. And what happens in real-life clinical practice? So I was inspired by Dr. Jishnu Das, who was an economist at the World Bank at that time. He was doing very interesting studies on quality of medical care in India and other countries. And we use what we call standardized patients. I don't know if you use standardized patients here for clinical training. It's a very well-known system where you have a person acting, right? Trained actors, mystery clients. We train them to go and show, pretend to have TB symptoms, and then we see what happens to them. And these studies, we have a huge consortium working on it. We have now done standardized patient studies on quality of TB care in 6 countries around the world. India, China, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Indonesia. And I'm going to summarize all of these papers in 2 slides. One of our first standardized patient case that we do is, I will walk into a clinic and I'll say, मेरे को बहुत दिन से खांसी है, बुखार है और नहीं जा रहा है. All I have is long duration cough or fever, and then I stop. Then I see what the doctor does. Do you even ask me how long I have been coughing? Right? If you ask me, then I'll say 2 to 3 weeks. Sputum, yes. Weight loss, yes. Loss of appetite, yes. Every possible clue that person will narrate. In fact, my 15-year-old child will say this is likely to be TB. That's how simple we made that case, right? Classic suspected tuberculosis by any textbook definition, okay? Are you ready to see what doctors did with this person, right? Across all countries, take a look. Across all countries, about 1 in 3 of this suspected TB was correctly managed. Most doctors didn't even ask how long the cough and fever was. Very few people ordered a smear microscopy. Forget cultures, forget gene expert. Even smear microscopy was missing. If at all they ordered anything, it was a chest X-ray. But what most practitioners did around the world, medicines, 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 medicines. Empiric management was the #1 modality of how this suspected TB was managed. Tons of cough syrup, tons of antibiotics. Oh my God, antibiotics are like candies, right? Sabke liye de do, azithromycin. We saw that during COVID, didn't we? Right? The amount of antibiotic abuse that was happening during COVID. Forget hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and all that rubbish. Even regular antibiotics, just going through the roof. For most primary care practitioners, antibiotics is the #1 test for tuberculosis. We talk about test and treat, right? In primary care, it's treat first and then maybe test later. You have to fail 3 rounds of broad spectrum antibiotics before anybody even starts thinking of tuberculosis in this country. That is based on data. It takes on average 60 days for TB to be diagnosed in India, and it takes on average 3 different visits and multiple rounds of failed broad spectrum therapies before anybody even says, okay, this is bad news, let's get a chest X-ray. That is the pathway of care in India. And by the time this drama plays out, on average, 15 Indians are infected by 1 person with tuberculosis. This is how the chain of transmission is kept alive and flying in this country. And there are, of course, massive underlying social determinants like poverty and malnutrition that keep everybody vulnerable in this community, right? So how do you change this kind of empiricism in clinical practice, right? How do you get people to be rational about how they're doing clinical work? And in primary care, this isn't just about TB, and I'll show you in a second how primary care works. All of you know this, actually. Nothing I'm telling you is news to you. You're all nodding your head. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This isn't news to you at all. And here's one more thing that we did. When we do standardized patient work, we first send the mystery patient. The doctor doesn't know this person is coming, okay? We get ethics approval to do this. So let's say Dr. Kalantri has already seen a mystery client in his OPD here. So we know exactly what Dr. S.P. Kalantri did with the mystery patient. That is called real life practice, what he actually did. Then 2 weeks later, I will go to Dr. S.P. Kalantri and I'll sit with him and say, can you do a vignette with me? Vignettes is another way to measure quality of care, right? A vignette would be, I'll tell SP, if you saw a 30-year-old male, 60 kilograms weight, with 2 weeks of cough and low-grade fever and night sweats, what would you do? Now, this is measuring SP's knowledge. Practice, I already know, because the standardized patient has already seen him. I know exactly what he did without even telling him what was happening. What I'm getting from vignette is SP's knowledge, self-reported knowledge. Now, for the same set of doctors and providers, take a look at what data we got from vignettes and take a look at what they actually did there in their clinical practice, right? In South Africa, Senegal, India, and China, you can see knowledge is fantastic. Most people said, oh, 2 weeks of cough, fever, I will ask for a sputum test. I will test for tuberculosis. Same people, when they actually saw someone like that, they were barely doing anything that they said in the vignettes. This is one form of no-do gap. The gap between what you and I know as doctors and what we are willing to demonstrate in our actual real-world clinical practice. The fact that this no-do gap is being seen across all countries is quite a striking finding. It isn't just India. Everywhere in the world, we doctors, I'm including all of you and me, we know a lot, but we refuse to demonstrate that in our clinical practice. Have we not done this? ये diarrhea है, garden variety diarrhea है, antibiotics don't work. We'll still take antibiotics. We will still give antibiotics. ये regular fever है, URI है, antibiotics don't work. Azithro दे दो. Azithro ले लो, खुद, right? How many of us have treated our children with URI, with useless, unnecessary antibiotics, knowing fully well it doesn't work, right? This is the no-do gap, and we all do this. Every one of us does this. COVID is a spectacular example. We knew there was so much rubbish around COVID. We still did it. We still gave hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin, complete nonsensical therapies. Maybe Sevagram didn't. Okay, I know you worked hard, and we wrote a case study about you because you are one of the few rational hospitals in the world. But this wasn't the case across India and across the world, right? This is called no-do gap, the gap between what doctors know theoretically, what they're willing to practice in their community. There's lots of theory about why this no-do gap exists. Some of it is as simple as, if I don't give you antibiotics, you're going to go away from me. I'm going to lose my patient, right? And in private practice, that is massive. Nobody wants to lose their patient, right? There are also economic reasons. If you come to me for diarrhea, and if I don't give you anything, then you'll say, what kind of a doctor are you, right? If all I give you is ORS and send you home, Abhi, I'm still having diarrhea, I'm still having symptoms, kuch to de do, give me something, right? So we resort to intravenous medicines, IV fluids, all sorts of rubbish because of the pressure that kind of practice environments brings into our, and in private sector, all of you know what I'm talking about. The pressure is immense to also maximize revenues for our hospitals. That's why we know CT scan is useless. We'll still ask for it, right? This is the real world practice that we're talking about. And look at this beautiful study, again by Dr. Jishnu Das. He now has done, he and others, have looked at the same no-do gap for TB for other conditions, diarrhea, angina, asthma, for a whole variety of conditions. In every single condition, they found the same no-do gap. So now, not only is no-do gap found around the world, you now see it across all disease conditions. Diarrhea, same thing. Respiratory infection, same thing. Angina, same thing. It does not even matter. Every single scenario, doctors know a lot more what their practice is often very, very divergent from what their knowledge is. Isn't this fascinating? What does it say about us, right? Even our textbooks used to say principles and practice of medicine, right? Principles and practice, as if we know what to do, but somehow our practice deviates from our principles, right? Quite a stunning reflection on how we as doctors work and how we are trained to work and what our real life practice environments are. So, now that you've seen how bad things are in TB and how big the no-do gap is, I want to offer a few suggestions on how we can improve quality of care. How often do we even talk about quality of care, right? Quality of medical care as a notion, right? So in many places, there is all of you know this famous Mayo Clinic, right? Mayo Clinic in Rochester. I visited Mayo Clinic to give a talk. Everywhere in Mayo Clinic, you will see their quality pledge. Right? You can't walk through Mayo without some quality stuff hitting you on your face. They have entire departments dedicated to quality. So they look at everything. What's the wound infection rate in this clinic? What is the C-section rate here? What is our mortality rate in the ICU? Everything is measured and tracked over time. So they know if something bizarre is going on. This month, wound infection rate is gone 10% higher than last month. Why? Right? Quality is baked into the way they think, right? Now, we have to ask ourselves, what does quality even mean to us? How do we ensure quality and standardize it across our medical practice, right? In this hospital or anywhere else in the world, right? So I offer 3 things that we can all do for TB, right? Now I'm focusing just on TB. We often say there are patients who are hard to reach, right? TB patients are hard to reach, because they are poor, because they are migrants, because they are belonging to certain vulnerable societal groups, certain vulnerable castes, whatever. This graphic completely flips this. It is not that patients are hard to reach, it is our TB service that is hard to reach. Our TB services are genuinely not patient-friendly at all. Very, very often you will find that there is nothing available until you reach the district hospital. This is why patients have to go from place to place to place before TB is diagnosed. There isn't even a test available at many, many sub-centers or PHC level. How do you even detect TB then? You have to treat them with medicines and wait until they fall really sick before you detect them. And by the time you detect them, they have cavities in the lung. And if you already have cavities in the lung, you have a very high risk of mortality, right? We are detecting TB too late because of this. So we really need to invert the pyramid and say, TB comes from a control paradigm. In fact, have you noticed the name of TB control programs? National Tuberculosis Control Program. TB comes from a place of deep fear, fear of contagion. You will infect others. And therefore, controlling the disease is the primary goal of a TB control program. I argue that we first have to do a good job of caring for people with TB. Control comes after. Even during COVID, did we not do that? The minute somebody had COVID, we closed their apartment buildings, we branded them, right? We stigmatized them. It was the fear of contagion. It's not about, oh my God, are you dying? Can we bring you food? Are you okay? No, it's all about, are you a threat to others? TB comes from a deep place of fear. Every single TB control program comes from that public health perspective. For once, I will say, put public health behind, put patient care first. First, take care of the person who is sick. Public health comes automatically. But instead, TB has always put public health ahead of patient control. That is why, for years, we said, oh, if you don't have smear positivity, don't worry about it. Right? We'll only focus on smear positive cases because they are the threat to us. Smear negative, forget it. Extrapulmonary TB, forget it. Childhood TB, don't even talk about it, right? Because we never prioritized. It was all through the lens of public health. And that approach is failing us badly. We have abandoned too many people who are sick, and we put public health first. I argue, unless we put patient care first ahead of public health, we will not solve the TB program. Next, even our language. How many of you have used the word TB suspect? I have, right? Now, after all these years, we are learning that that is not the kind of stigmatizing language we should be using. Suspect comes from a police language. Right? Now, you are a suspect. Right? Defaulter. You remember that we used to write in a TB register, you're a defaulter. Right? That is also a police terminology. Right? This is not the right way to treat people with tuberculosis. Why? Because you and I could have TB tomorrow. We may have already had TB. None of us would want this control approach. How many of you would be happy if you said, you have to come and swallow your pills in front of me? I don't trust you. You will not take your medicine. You have to come every second day, open your mouth, and swallow your pills in front of me. That comes from a deep place of lack of trust. Would you do that for diabetes? Would you do that for HIV? You won't. For TB, you will say, oh, we don't trust you. The entire TB program comes from this notion. There is no trust. There is no centering on people who are sick. It's all about control and the contagion and the public health aspects. My friend Amrita Daftari has done a beautiful study in South Africa where she looked at HIV programs and tuberculosis program. And she compared the two, the contrasting cultures. HIV was all about the sick person. Counseling, lots of counseling. Remember PMTCT, voluntary counseling and testing, tons of counseling, testing, and then again post-test counseling, privacy, confidentiality, patient-centered care. HIV made it all about people with HIV. TB is all about control. Right? You are the problem. You are infecting others. It's all about public health. That is the biggest difference between these two groups. Even today, tuberculosis does not center people with TB. I was at the meeting yesterday and day before in Gandhinagar. I've never seen an HIV meeting which does not begin with the HIV-infected person as the primary speaker. No HIV meeting anywhere in the world happens without their involvement, without their permission, and without them in the leadership role. TB, you can have conference after conference. There is no TB survivor in the audience. It's that different between HIV and TB. What makes these different? Why aren't people with tuberculosis at the center place? And I made the same mistake as everybody else. I run a very well-known course in Montreal on TB. I ran them for like 6 years and I never invited somebody with TB. Finally, I woke up. I started inviting people with TB. Now, every single course on TB I teach, everywhere in the world, begins with TB survivors talking. Because to me, that is how I have finally learned my lesson, that if you do not make it about them, we're going to lose so many people because they just don't feel valued in this system. Right? They do not feel valued. They do not see as being treated as human beings. Right? TB patients are not treated as human beings in many parts of the world. Stigma is still very much alive around TB. So we can now thinking about how to improve tuberculosis care. All of the people in that picture are people with tuberculosis. And we asked them, show us what does your dream clinic look like. And they gave us their wish list. They said, talk to us, treat us with dignity, just counsel us. Tell us, what is this sputum test? Why am I taking these medicines? Treat us like human beings. Give us all services in one place. Many of them said we have mental health problems, and the system does not take care of us because we have mental health issues. When you look at TB-centered care, this is what makes TB-centered care possible, that you start addressing all their needs. The biggest fear is the bad side effects that they endure. And if you don't take care of the side effects, they're not going to come back to you, right? This is the kind of system. That is why adherence to TB is very poor, because we do not stay with them throughout the 6 months or 12 months or 24 months that they are with us. And this is an unbelievable piece of work. All of you have seen this famous trial by Dr. Anurag and Madhavi Bhargava, who were, Anurag was last year's awardee. And these two papers came in Lancet last week, and it was all over the news in India. But just going and giving people food rations, right? Just $10 worth of rice and pulses and oil, and just somebody showing up at their door every month, 95% treatment completion. 95%. Nowhere in India have I ever seen a 95% treatment completion. And a massive reduction in mortality, and half of incidents in the contacts was averted because the family received food rations. What a stunning piece of work by two amazing people who went ahead and demonstrated what is possible. Anurag and Madhavi both told me that the fact that somebody just showed up at their door, right, in these rural tribal parts of Jharkhand, that itself made these TB patients so happy, and they went to them for all sorts of issues. Mere ko ye nahi hai, ye nahi hai. They, in effect, became their treatment supporters. Right? In addition to delivering rations, they also became the treatment supporter. So social protection works. And in India, if we don't address nutrition, I don't see any hope of addressing tuberculosis, because 50% of India's TB, the attributable risk is malnutrition. Undernutrition is our #1 driver, and Anurag and Madhavi demonstrated how we can actually act on it. And then the last few things that I want to talk about before I close is that we also looked at the public and private sector issues in tuberculosis care. This is our study in Mumbai, where we worked with the Mumbai Corporation. We did standardized patients in Mumbai's private sector, and we did standardized patients in Mumbai public sector clinics, right? The MCGM or the corporation clinics. And look what we found. Public providers correctly managed 75% of standardized patients, while private providers only did 35%. Okay? So if you just looked at technical quality of care, MCGM, Mumbai Corporation, is here, and private providers are here. But then look at the rest of the situation. Private providers had much shorter waiting times to see patients, spent 2 times longer with the patient, consultation time was longer, and asked 2 times more history questions of their clients. Now, this is the difference between public and private in India. Public may well be doing much better technically, but they are failing people on basic common courtesies. You have to wait for 6 hours before I see you. I'll see you for 30 seconds. Have you not seen that, an average consultation time? I don't know what your consultation time at MGIMS is, but in most primary care clinics in the world, average consultation time is in the order of 2 minutes. What justice can you do to someone with anything in 2 minutes, right? Public sector does not care for you. That is the reputation it has. That is why so many patients with TB in India still go to the private sector. Not because they are spectacular at medicine, but because of all of this. This is where I have learned that you cannot deliver quality only on the technical front. You may be the best doctor, but if you can't talk to people, if you cannot spend time with them, they're not going to come to you, right? Good quality care is both. I will do the technically the right thing, but I will also talk to you. I will also treat you well. I will treat you with respect, with dignity. An ideal clinic will be both. Technically good, but also patient-centered, willing to do all of those things, and so on and so forth. Even the poorest patient prefers to go to the private sector. Why? Because they don't want to waste 1 day of wages waiting to be seen in a public clinic. Public clinic is free, but public clinic is expensive because I've lost 1 day of wages. They're doing that math in their head. They're saying, I'm much better off going even to an unqualified practitioner around my corner, but I don't want to spend 6 hours at a public hospital waiting to be seen for 30 seconds. This is the kind of math people are doing in their head and making decisions in this country. So we have to start thinking about quality. Quality on a technical side, but also quality on how patient-centric we are or not. That means convenient times when the clinic should be open. Evenings. Why does every private practitioner has an evening clinic? Because evening is convenient. There is a very sound reason why nobody wants to waste their daily work time. They prefer to go in the evenings. Public sector is all in the daytime. Private sector understands what the needs of the clients are, and it's open at evenings, at nights, weekends. They find a way to serve you and me. That's what makes private practice more successful in terms of attracting people. So we have to stop talking only about DOTS coverage. On paper, 100% of India has DOTS coverage, on paper. Okay? What does it even mean, DOTS coverage? If you're sick, you get free TB care. That's not enough. You have to start asking how good is the quality of care. If the quality of care for TB was good, why are we losing 5 to 10% of patients? Why is the disease killing so many people if our quality of care was good, right? We are failing people. We have to start asking, how do we improve quality of care? That cascade of care model that I showed you is a beautiful way to say, this is the cascade of care last year. We have tried to address these problems. This is how much the cascade of care is improved. In HIV/AIDS, they use the cascade model everywhere for many, many decades. TB is just starting to do that now, right? What is QI, quality improvement, and how do we bring that into TB practice is something we should be talking about, right? I visited South Africa and Uganda. They have active QI programs happening in tuberculosis. In India, we tried to do that in pilot studies in Mumbai, Patna, and Mehsana, and we showed that if you work with private practitioners in India, if you give them free medicines from the government, you notify cases for them, you're willing to counsel them, you have call centers checking in on people, you can improve adherence. You can improve microbiological testing. Even in the toughest environments like Patna, we could improve quality of care. But you got to make that investment, right? And private practitioners, I have learned, if you take away their clients, they will never work with you. You have to let them keep their clients, but improve the quality of care and give them free services, right? Never ever threaten them, never try to take away their patients, otherwise they will never work with you. And that is true for all OBGYN, any field. If you want to work successfully with the private practice in India, you have to start treating them with respect and do not take away their clients. Let them manage their patients, but you help them manage their patients better. They're very happy to work with you. And lastly, so much we've learned from COVID. I cannot tell you the kind of innovations we've seen with COVID. Look at the amount of molecular testing this country did. At one point, India was doing 100 million plus PCRs every year, right? 100 million. Why can we not do that for TB? How is it that we are still messing around with a microscope in 2023 when we have successfully used and scaled up molecular testing for COVID? There's zero technical reason why everybody with tuberculosis cannot be diagnosed in 2023 with an upfront molecular test. That is the bare minimum we should be doing in 2023. Not only a molecular test, also rifampicin resistance. We must start testing for drug resistance, otherwise we do horrible things with our regimens, right? We generate drug resistance by missing DRTB. So at a minimum, everybody in India must receive an upfront CB-NAT or a true NAT with rifampicin resistance. That is the bare minimum we can be doing. And there's no reason why we can't do it because we have all the machines, the capacity, and the money in this country. So that's the discussion last week in Gandhinagar. We are pushing the Indian program very hard to completely replace smear microscopy with molecular testing. We now have 6-month regimens for DRTB, all oral, no injections, no toxic injection, no kanamycin, no deafness. We have beautiful treatments now. We are again pushing the Indian program to adopt the 6-month regimen and completely abandon injections. I want to see injections gone from TB. I want to see smear microscopy dead for upfront diagnosis. Molecular testing, short regimens is the right way to go. So those are the 3 things that we have been discussing throughout this whole week that I've been here. I spent time at the Central TB Division. There is now a 146/24 campaign. 1 month for TB prevention, 4-month regimen for drug-sensitive and childhood TB, 6-month all-oral bedaquiline-containing regimen. That is the bare minimum we should offer to people with TB. Everybody deserves a rapid molecular test, and I think everybody with TB must receive nutrition support based on the incredible work that Madhavi and Anurag and others have demonstrated in this country. So I'm super grateful to all of you, especially Dr. Gangadharan's family, Shri Dhirubai Mehta, Dr. Narang, Dr. Kalantri and family, Dr. Jaju and family, Dr. Desikan. I forgot to mention that. I was greatly inspired by Dr. Desikan. I, in fact, wanted to become a leprologist when I was finishing my MD because that's how inspired I was working in Vellore. And then, of course, all of you for your wonderful participation and for your warmth and appreciation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your experiences and giving us an insight into the existing gaps and the remedies for bridging them in TB. As there are no question answer after the oration, those who want to consult Dr. Madhukar Pai, sir, can do so during lunch. May I now request Dr. Vijayshri Kherkar, Organizing Secretary of the award, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Respected dignitaries, invited guests, students, and my friends. It's a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. First and foremost, I express a sincere gratitude for our special guest, Dr. Madhukar Pai, who visited this place, MJMS, after so many years, and gracing today's occasion and accepting PRJ Gangadharan Award. I also express our deep sense of appreciation, gratitude to our President, Honorable Shri Dhirubhai Mehta, for his support and encouragement. His able guidance has always encouraged us. Our thanks to Shri Tapadia ji, Vice President, Kasturba Health Society, for his stewardship, support, and vision. I also thank our Secretary, Kasturba Health Society, Dr. B.S. Garg, Dean, Dr. A.K. Shukla, for their support rendered to us for organizing this event. I owe special gratitude to the non-teaching staff who have worked hard to ensure that this occasion becomes a memorable success. I also thank all the distinguished invitees present here accepting our invitation. All the dignitaries, guests, students, thank you very much. Without your presence, we would not have made this occasion successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I would request you all to kindly stand for national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय है भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल वंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलगी तरंगा तब शुभ नामे गाए तब शुभ नाशिष मागे गाए तब जय गाता जन गण मंगलदायक जय है भारत भाग्य विधाता जय है जय है जय है जय 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 है
Thank you. Now kindly join for lunch in Kamla Desikan Lawn.